that's awful. Yeah. Woo! Ow! Can you imagine doing that? Hello, welcome to Waypoint Survival. Today, I'm going to talk to you about 10 hobo uses for kerosene. Stay tuned. Before we get started in the video, I need to give a disclaimer. This video and its contents are for informational purposes only. Use or misuse of this information is entirely in the hands of the user. In no way can Waypoint Survival or James Bender be held liably responsible for the use or misuse of the said information. Kerosene should not be ingested and quickly washed off with water and an appropriate soap if it comes in contact with your skin. These are old-time remedies and in no way should be used to treat sickness or injury. If you are sick or hurt, go immediately to a proper care facility for medical treatment. Kerosene, also known as lamp oil or coal oil, or in Europe as paraffin oil, has a very long history. As a matter of fact, it can be dated all the way back to around 1500 BC in the Ming Dynasty. And it was used for lighting lamps and for heating homes. However, the distillation process began in earnest in the mid-1800s and of course was widely used, again, for lamps and lamp oil and for fires and things like that. In a previous video, I talked about my hobo fire kit, and one of the main ingredients was kerosene. If you wish, there will be a link down in the description box to watch this video. Interestingly enough, kerosene was also one of the main ingredients used in home remedies to treat horses. Kerosene oil is still used today in a lot of products. It is a base for ointments and creams, as well as for skincare in lotions, moisturizers, and lip balms. It's also used for hair serums and leave-in conditioners. To be sure, hobos in the classic era grew up on farms and in the backcountry. Not many of them grew up in urban areas as they were very lightly populated compared to today. So they would naturally be very aware of the many uses of kerosene and would probably have carried it with them and used it quite frequently. So let's get into those right now. One of the first uses that a hobo would use kerosene for was to get rid of an infection. And they would pour it straight into the wound as an antiseptic. As a matter of fact, just the other day I was talking to a gentleman who is 90 years old. And he was telling me that when he was a boy on the farm, he was running around barefooted and he accidentally deeply cut his foot on a piece of tin. When he got to the house, his mother simply poured kerosene straight into the wound and then bound it up with a strip of cloth. She left the cloth on for several days. It never got infected. It healed up well, and he's still walking around at 90 years old. The next use that a hobo might have for kerosene would be for a toothache. They would simply apply the kerosene to a piece of cotton cloth and then apply it to the tooth where the ache was and rub it in perhaps a little bit and use that until the pain went away. Toothaches were a really common problem and a pretty big deal back in the day before we had a lot of dentists in every town. Another very important use that a hobo might find for kerosene would be to cure an itch. For this, they would mix some kerosene and some hog lard. Then you would apply the mixture to chigger or mosquito bites. Adding the lard helps to prevent blistering from just using pure kerosene. However, you can apply just kerosene on forearms, wrists, and ankles to help keep the chiggers off in the beginning. For stomach worms, sore throat, or a cold, you would simply take a pinch of sugar, and a pinch of sugar can be determined in several ways, either with the thumb and forefinger or the thumb and the first two fingers. Just reach down into the sugar bowl, get a pinch out. We're carrying ours in a bottle, so it's just as easy to pour it. And then the addition of 2 or 3 drops of kerosene. 1, 2, and 3. Alright, so 3 drops of kerosene, and then this would be taken several times a day. Maybe the first day would be enough, or you might have to do it for several days. Oh, that's awful! Yeah! My shop teacher when I was in high school actually told me about this remedy. He was a fighter pilot who used to fly planes off of the USS Enterprise during the Second World War. He was a really cool guy, knew a lot of neat stuff, and of course home remedies were just part of it. I also read that during the Vietnam War, men who were in prison and locked up in Vietnam would often get stomach worms. And when the guard wasn't looking, they would sneak up and take a swig out of the kerosene lanterns. And the guy writing it said it would definitely get the worms, and almost got the guy that drank it. Another interesting use for kerosene that a hobo would have known about because of their work in the agricultural fields was that they would use this as a spray on potato plants to kill potato bugs. I'm not sure I'd want to eat potatoes that had been sprayed with kerosene, even if it was just the plant. Another industrial use that they would have used, especially around farm equipment and machinery that had been used to being out in the weather and the rain, they would use this to lubricate things. They would coat things with it, such as tractor parts and pieces, or any machinery that had to be left out in the barn where it would be subject to moisture. But this was also a great solvent, and it was used to get all kinds of glues and things like that off. As a paint remover, if you get anything on your hands, you could wipe it off with this. But this was also used to loosen rusty bolts. You pour it on the threads and around the nut, and wait a few minutes, and then apply your wrench and some torque, and you can loosen it up. As a matter of fact, kerosene is just plain form, is very similar to WD-40 and liquid wrench and things like that that we would use today. So that's kind of a neat use that we could still even use now. This next use is very interesting, and I read about this quite a few times in different accounts. But they would also use kerosene for head lice. And what you would do is you would apply this to the scalp and to the hair, rub it in of course, and then you would let it sit for 24 hours before you would wash it out with some sort of soap. However, beware of blistering. This can be really hard on your skin, and some people are allergic to it. This was also used to help cure athlete's foot, which I'm sure probably a lot of hobos suffered with back in the day. Another use for kerosene was for chest congestion. And you would mix kerosene, turpentine, and hog lard. Mix it all together, and then you would simply apply it and rub it onto the chest area. Another interesting application that a hobo would use kerosene for is for snake bite. What you would do is you would mix kerosene and sugar together and stir it into a paste. Then you would make a cut across where the fangs went in and simply apply the mixture by rubbing it into the area where the snake bite was. And finally, another use that hobos would have had for kerosene was for sore muscles and rheumatism. You would simply rub the kerosene itself without being mixed with anything else into your sore muscles. Just rub it into your skin vigorously, and this would help you from a hard day of work or whatever. If you were hurting and you need to get up and get moving, you could always rub yourself down with kerosene. All of this could be easily carried by a hobo, the kerosene in his fire kit, and then the sugar, the turpentine, the hog lard, and the spoon, and a small leather bag, which could easily fit into any of his gear and even into a large pocket of an overcoat. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video about the hobos and some of the home remedies that they might have used on themselves and on their fellow hobos as they were riding the rails and traveling around the country doing their various jobs. It was a hard life, and they didn't have access to all the health care and the medical facilities that we do today. Neither did their parents and grandparents. And so these were things that they inherited that were passed down to them from long before we were thought of. Of course, today we have much better options. And so just as I said at the beginning, please don't use any of these. These are things that are best left in the past. We have a lot better creams and ointments and things for burns and cuts than they did back then, and we are to be very grateful. But still, it's an interesting look into our past and our continuing saga of the classic hobo and all the things he did to get through life in his day. This is James Bender for Waypoint Survival. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, make sure and check out the links in the description box below, just under the More button. While you're down there, you'll also find our waypointsurvival.com link. And this is where you can sign up to take survival and bushcraft classes at our beautiful training facility in Southern Ohio. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel. We'd really appreciate it. And when you do subscribe, make sure and press that bell button so that you can stay notified of all of our upcoming videos, and we'll talk to you next time.